You are listening to Season 2 of The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, the short and often daily podcast in which I chronicle my life and attempt to be a writer by writing daily. Sometimes. Hello, today is Sunday the 28th of September 2025 and you're listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer. And I had a couple of days off which I indicated I was going to do from London and when I was staying at the little hotel in London, and I kind of left a bit of a cliffhanger about where I would end up going and what would end up happening. Now, if you follow me on social media, you'll know what happened, but if you don't, I will tell you now. So I was on standby from 9:55. We have an area that we can sit in where, you know, there's a coffee shop and you can buy food and bits and pieces, because you could be there all day and not used. And kind of the way it works, if you're going to be used for a long haul flight, you tend to get called closer to the beginning of your standby because it's a long day otherwise. You know, you can't be on standby for nearly 6 hours and then get a 10-hour flight. It doesn't work like that. So about 2.5 hours in, I kind of realised the chances are that I was going to get called for short haul or nothing at all. Anyway, nearly 3 hours into my standby, I got a phone call from the resource planning people, and unusually they told me what I was doing on the phone. Normally they say, you've got an immediate report, you know, get to the operations desk. But they said, oh, you're positioning out to Washington. Now, positioning basically is a term we use when they need you to be in a certain place to take another flight, but you're not working it. So basically what it meant was that I was flying to Washington as a passenger to be available to bring the aircraft home. And it's not that complicated a reason. So the aircraft that the return flight was on was much bigger and needed a lot more crew than the aircraft the outbound flight was scheduled to be on. It was a last minute change. So it meant basically there were crew short. So I had to fly out as a passenger to be there to bring the flight home, which I did. The other thing I managed to successfully do whilst I was in Washington, I didn't do an awful lot whilst I was there, to be honest, but I did manage to get Chapter 11 signed off. So I think I did that live on a stream. I did. So Chapter 11 got signed off, which left me with just under 4,000 words to sign off to hit my target of 25,000 words for the end of the month. Now, this is silly because I've kind of it's a bit like last month actually. I had a real flurry of activity at the start of the month, got loads done, and then I've written less this end of the month. But as normal, I kind of got to the point where I would have been irritated with myself if I hadn't got anything done, but I also left myself a situation where I had to get 4,000 words written in 3 days, one of which was the day I landed from Washington, D.C., having worked overnight to get back. And that's today. So what I did was I had a little sleep and I set myself an alarm for 3:30. The reason I set my alarm for 3:30 was I had a delivery slot from online food shop at that time. So I got up, I accepted the food delivery. Then once that was done, I also watched a live streamed book panel from the UK, UK Crime Book Club. Because my friend T.G. Campbell, who writes the Bow Street Society books, was on it. And as soon as that live stream was done, I then started to do some writing this afternoon. And initially I was like, this isn't going to work. And weirdly, T.G. Campbell suggested on the live stream, why don't you try an espresso shot? So the first thing to say is I've never done that before. I always drink very watered down coffee. I don't like the strong flavour. So I had an espresso shot, and I'm not going to lie, it was awful, but it kind of woke me up a little bit. And then the other thing I realised was that the chapter I need to start writing today, which is set in hospital and is following up on Evelyn and Molly, I suddenly realised, well, I didn't suddenly realise, I already knew that I'd written a similar scene, admittedly between different characters, but a similar scene in the very first version of this I'd attempted to write, last year or whenever it was. And it might have been longer ago than that, actually. And that there was actually some material that I could use. So I ended up taking the first 700 words of that old chapter, editing it down quite a lot because there were some character descriptions, because in that version of the book it was the first time we saw Isabel, so I had to describe her, whereas this isn't now the first time we've seen Isabel, so I could take that description out. I edited it down to about 600 words, and then across 2 writing sprints I managed to get it up to 2,000 words, which is brilliant, because basically it now means I'm back on track for potentially hitting my target for the end of the month, because I've written 2,000 words today. Obviously they don't count because I have to be signed off for them to count, but tomorrow that leaves me 1 scene to write. It's going to be a much easier scene to write than the one I've just written, because I have a much better idea of what needs to happen in it. So yeah, that gives me tomorrow, and I don't know if I'll be doing it on a live stream. It just depends on sleep and stuff like that. I am meeting Tani Campbell tomorrow and at a coffee shop, so I'll probably do a couple of writing sprints there. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll get it done, and then that leaves me the 30th, the final day of the month, to do the editing and sign off. So if I can get that done, that leaves me on my word count target for the month. Will I do it? We shall see. I feel relatively optimistic, but even if I don't hit it, it will only be, it'll be like a day out, and I will get it signed off next month. Anyway, that's me for today. Thank you for listening. I will now I'll be back for the rest of every day for the rest of this month, which is only 2 more days. And then I'm not working in October, so I intend to do a lot more writing. I've set myself a word target of 30,000 words, but actually it'd be marvellous if I could exceed that, which of course means I need to work on my chapter plan, because I know loosely what has to happen next, but I've not written it down in the detail that I need to be able to write it quickly. Anyway, that's me for today. I'll be back at some point tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening. Take care. Bye-bye. You have been listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer. For more information about what I'm writing, go to linktr.ee/Richard Writes, capital R, capital W, where you can find details of my website and social media. I may see you there.